The baby was crying so quietly that most people walking past never noticed. But Daniel Carter did. He noticed the tiny trembling bundle wrapped in a thin, faded blanket, and he noticed the young mother holding the baby against her chest while standing beneath the broken awning of a closed grocery store. Snow was falling around them, melting against the pavement, and the woman's lips had turned pale from the cold. She kept rubbing the baby's back with one hand while using the other to pull a worn coat tighter around the child. She looked exhausted, frightened, and completely alone. Daniel had been driving home after a 12-hour shift, thinking only about his own bills, his daughter waiting at home, and the empty refrigerator he needed to fill the next morning. But when he saw that mother sink slowly onto the cold concrete because her legs could no longer hold her, he slammed on the brakes. He had no idea that stopping his car that night would change 3 lives forever. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can give someone a second chance when they have almost lost hope, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to you. Daniel stepped out of his old pickup truck and immediately felt the freezing wind cut through his jacket. He walked toward the woman carefully, not wanting to frighten her. She looked up at him with wide, guarded eyes. She was probably in her early 20s, but the hardship on her face made her look much older. The baby was no more than a few months old, with a red little nose and cheeks that trembled every time the wind touched them. Daniel took off his own heavy jacket and placed it around the mother and baby without asking questions. The woman tried to protest, but her voice was weak. Daniel simply told her that the cold did not care about pride and neither did he. He opened the passenger door of his truck and told her to get inside where it was warm. She hesitated for several seconds before finally stepping forward. Her name was Emily. Her baby was named Lily. Emily explained that she had been trying to find a warm place for the night, but the shelter she had called earlier was full. The last bus had already left, and she had only a few dollars in her pocket. She had been walking for hours because she did not know where else to go. Daniel listened without interrupting. He had learned years earlier that people rarely told the full truth when they were afraid of being judged. Sometimes the most important thing you could give someone was simply enough time to tell their story. Daniel knew what it meant to struggle. 5 years earlier, his wife, Sarah, had died unexpectedly after a long illness, leaving him to raise their 6-year-old daughter, Emma, alone. He remembered the first winter after Sarah's death. He had sat in his truck outside the pharmacy counting the last few dollars in his wallet, trying to decide whether to buy medicine for Emma or groceries for the week. He had felt ashamed of needing help. He remembered a stranger who had quietly paid for the medicine without asking his name. That small act had kept him from breaking completely. Daniel had never forgotten it. He drove Emily and Lily to a 24-hour diner first. He bought them hot soup, warm milk, toast, and coffee for himself. Emily ate slowly at first, as though she expected someone to tell her she was taking too much. Then hunger overcame embarrassment. Daniel watched her eat while Lily slept against her chest, finally warm enough to rest. When the waitress brought a small bowl of mashed vegetables for the baby, Emily almost cried. Daniel pretended not to notice. After the meal, Daniel called several shelters. One had space, but only for women without infants. Another could take Lily but could not guarantee a bed for Emily. Daniel became frustrated. He looked at Emily and saw the fear returning to her eyes. He knew exactly what she was thinking, another night outside. His house was small. There were bills on the kitchen counter, laundry piled near the stairs, and toys scattered across the living room because Emma had never believed in putting anything away. But there was a spare bedroom. Daniel hesitated, not because he did not want to help, but because he knew the world could be dangerous and complicated. He was a single father responsible for his daughter. Bringing a stranger into their home was not a decision he could make lightly. Then Lily began crying. Emily held her closer, whispering that everything would be okay even though her own hands were shaking. Daniel remembered the night his wife had died and how desperately he had wished someone would simply tell him that he did not have to face the darkness alone. He took a breath and made a decision. He told Emily she could stay in the spare room for a few nights while she figured things out. There would be rules, of course. He wanted his daughter safe, and he wanted Emily to feel respected. She could lock the bedroom door from the inside. She did not owe him money, favors, or anything else. She only needed to accept help. Emily stared at him as if she had forgotten how kindness sounded. When Daniel brought them home, Emma was asleep on the couch. She had been waiting for her father and had lost the battle with exhaustion. Daniel carried her upstairs, then returned to find Emily standing in the doorway of the spare bedroom, staring at the clean sheets as though they were something luxurious. That night, Lily slept in a borrowed bassinet beside the bed. Emily barely slept at all. She was too afraid that morning would come and Daniel would change his mind. But morning came quietly. Daniel woke before sunrise, prepared breakfast, packed Emma's lunch, and left a plate outside Emily's door. He did not knock. He did not want her to feel watched. When Emily eventually came downstairs, she found Daniel helping Emma tie her shoelaces. Emma looked at Lily and smiled. Within days, something began to change inside the house. Emily helped prepare dinner. Daniel repaired a broken cabinet. Emma started showing Lily her favorite stuffed rabbit. The home, which had felt painfully empty since Sarah's death, began filling with small sounds again. A baby laughing. A child running down the stairs. Someone humming while washing dishes. Yet Emily carried a secret. One evening, Daniel noticed her sitting alone at the kitchen table, holding an envelope with trembling fingers. She had received a letter from the hospital where Lily had been born. The hospital bills had grown beyond anything she could pay. But the letter contained something else too. Lily needed a medical procedure within the next few weeks. Emily had been planning to leave. She believed staying any longer would make her a burden. She thought Daniel would eventually regret helping her. She quietly packed Lily's clothes into a small bag while Daniel was at work. But Emma saw her. The little girl stood in the hallway holding Lily's stuffed rabbit and asked where Emily was going. Emily knelt down and explained that sometimes grown-ups had to leave even when they did not want to. Emma hugged her. She told Emily that her mother used to say that people were sometimes sent into your life because they needed a family for a little while. Emily broke down. When Daniel came home, he found Emily sitting on the floor beside the suitcase, crying silently. She finally told him everything. The hospital bills. The procedure. The fear. The reason she had left home in the first place. Her boyfriend, Lily's father, had disappeared shortly after learning about the pregnancy. Emily's own parents had died years earlier, and the relative she had trusted had taken advantage of her financially before throwing her out. Daniel listened. He did not promise miracles. He did not tell her that everything would magically become easy. Instead, he told her that they would make a plan. The next morning, Daniel drove Emily to the hospital. He helped her speak with the social worker, filled out assistance forms, and contacted a community organization that helped young mothers. He even spoke to his employer about picking up extra work, but the hours were already wearing him down. For the first time, Emily realized Daniel was struggling too. One evening, she found him asleep at the kitchen table with unpaid bills spread around him. His hands were rough from work. His face looked exhausted. Beside the bills was a photograph of Sarah. Emily understood then that Daniel was not a wealthy man rescuing a helpless stranger. He was simply a tired father who knew what it felt like to be scared and still choose kindness. The turning point came on a freezing Tuesday morning. Lily suddenly became sick. Emily panicked when the baby's breathing became difficult. Daniel rushed them to the emergency room. The doctors treated Lily immediately, but the hours that followed were terrifying. Emily sat beside the hospital bed holding Lily's tiny hand while Daniel sat in the hallway, praying silently. At dawn, the doctor finally came out and said Lily was stable. Emily collapsed into tears. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder and told her that she had been strong all night. She shook her head. She said she had only been strong because someone had stood beside her. Weeks passed. Lily recovered. The community organization helped Emily find a small apartment and connected her with job training. Daniel helped her move into the new place. It was tiny and nearly empty, but it had a window overlooking a little park. Emily cried when she received the keys. Daniel told her the apartment did not need to be perfect. It only needed to be a place where Lily could grow up knowing she was safe. Months later, Emily found a job at a daycare center. She loved it. She understood children because she knew what it meant to need someone to believe in you before you could believe in yourself. Daniel's life changed too. Emma became happier. The silence that had haunted their house after Sarah's death slowly disappeared. Emily and Lily remained close to them, not as dependents, but as friends who had become family. Then, one winter evening, almost a year after the night outside the grocery store, Daniel received a knock on his door. It was Emily. Lily was walking now. She toddled across the porch wearing a bright red coat. In her tiny hand she carried a drawing made with crayons. The picture showed 4 people standing beneath a yellow sun. Daniel, Emma, Emily, and Lily. At the bottom, in uneven letters, Emily had written, "Thank you for stopping." Daniel looked at the picture for a long moment. He remembered that freezing night. The closed grocery store. The thin blanket. The young mother sitting on concrete because she had nowhere else to go. He realized something then. He had thought he was the one who saved them. But kindness had never worked that way. Sometimes, when you reach down to help someone stand, they unknowingly help you stand too. Daniel had spent years believing that after losing Sarah, his family could never feel whole again. But Emily and Lily had not replaced anyone. They had simply brought warmth into rooms that had been cold for too long. Emily eventually became a full-time caregiver and later opened a small daycare of her own. She named it Hope House. On the wall near the entrance hung a framed photograph of a snowy street and an old pickup truck. Every year, on the anniversary of the night Daniel found her, Emily brought Lily to his house for dinner. Lily grew up calling Daniel Uncle Daniel. Emma grew up calling Emily her sister. And Daniel never again drove past someone standing alone in the cold without wondering what story they were carrying. Years later, when Lily was old enough to understand the story, she asked Emily why Daniel had stopped that night. Emily smiled through tears and told her that sometimes the greatest miracles do not arrive with money, power, or grand speeches. Sometimes they arrive in an old truck. Sometimes they wear a worn jacket. Sometimes they simply stop when everyone else keeps driving. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Every like, comment, and share helps these stories reach someone who may need hope at exactly the right moment. And before you leave, I have one special request. Comment, "Kindness can change a life," below if you believe one small act of compassion can make a difference. Because somewhere tonight, there may be an Emily standing in the cold, believing nobody sees her. There may be a Lily waiting for someone to care. And there may be a Daniel driving past, wondering whether stopping could really matter. It can. One warm jacket can matter. One meal can matter. One open door can matter. One person saying, "You don't have to face this alone," can become the beginning of an entirely different life. Daniel stopped that night because he heard a baby crying. But what he discovered was that sometimes, when you stop to save someone else's hope, you find a piece of your own waiting there too. And that is the quiet miracle of kindness. You may never know how far your smallest act will travel.